well this afternoon. So today we're using one of the fabulous brand new layering stencils, and we're using the Wild Peony today, which goes with the Wild Peony embossing folder and die set. Alright, and I'm going to go through the whole procedure. So we're doing the stenciling, the die cutting, the embossing, and then we're going to put the card together, just so that you know. Okay, so let's make a start. Now what I would suggest is that you have a good look at the stencils that you've got in your set before you start, okay? Because this particular set has got 3 different sets of leaves. Alright, so if you look on the picture, you can see there's one set here which is a darkish green. Then there's another set here which is sort of a paler shade of that darker green, and then there's a completely different green. So you've got 3 completely different shades of green there, and I'm going to make my shades of green with blue and yellow, and I'm going to use the woodland moss to do all the veins. So just be aware that you're going to need several different shades of green. If you've got Lisa's inks, you can make your greens. If you've got other inks, you can use different greens. Okay, so we're going to start off with the leaves. So we're starting with our juicy pineapple, and again, I've said to you before, I've been using these now for about 3 weeks and they are still quite juicy. So I would take off quite a bit of ink. You can pick it up later, it's not going to make any difference. And I'm going in quite lightly here because I want to be able to look at the shade of green that I'm getting once I add the blue. Alright, so I'm going in with a lightish covering of yellow, and then if I want any more, I'm just going to go in a little bit heavier and add a little bit more. So I'll fill all that little aperture with yellow, and then for this first set of leaves I'm going to mix this with Tranquil Waters. Tranquil Waters is a gorgeous sort of aquamarine type blue, which is, it's a stunning colour. I love the colour. So I'll just pop that back on there for a second and take my Tranquil Waters. And this is a dark colour, so be careful. Again, take a lot of the ink off and put it on your stencil. You can pick it up off your stencil afterwards, alright? And again, I'm going in quite lightly because I want to deepen this shade as I'm adding my ink, so that I'm not going too light, because this set of leaves I want quite dark. So I'm going to hold the brush a little bit further down to give me a little bit more manoeuvrability into those apertures, and I am going quite heavy with this now because I want these leaves to be a really, really deep green. It's going to be a bluey green, but that's fine. If you don't like the shade of green and you want to sort of bring it back a little bit, you can go back in with the yellow if you want to, but I don't think I'm going to need to. I'm quite happy with this green. Okay, so that's my first layer. I like that. Now we're going in with layer 2, and again you can see this is another set of leaves, but it's also the sort of casing for this little bud here. Okay, so that's going to be a lightish green as well. So again, we're going back in with our yellow. Just put the lid on there. And again, going in light, because this is going to be quite a different shade of green. Okay. Now when you're using this set of stencils, be careful. Because of the detail that Lisa wants to give you on these stencils, you will find that there is a piece here that will lift quite easily. Like she showed you with the poppy stencils on Friday night, they will lift quite easily if you're a little bit overzealous with them. So just be mindful and just take your inking in the direction of that piece, because this piece here is the piece that's going to lift. Okay, so if you brush in that direction, that isn't going to lift. This piece here, although it's a small piece, you'll probably find won't lift at all. So just be mindful of how heavy you're stenciling. Okay, So because this is a lighter green, I'm going to use a different blue. And I'm going to use Surf's Up on this one. Again, this is another beautiful blue. This is the lighter of the two blues. The other blue is Deep Ocean, and that is really quite deep, and I don't want it that deep. So again, taking a lot of the ink off, because this is going to be sort of a limey green, if you like. And it's going to be completely different to the green we've already put down. Now I'm using the Wonder brushes as opposed to the stencil brushes because I want this colour to be soft, okay? I want it to be, if I use the stencil brushes, I've got more chance of adding too much ink, and I don't want that. I want this to be a really pale sort of green, okay? So just bear that in mind when you're adding your colour. The heaviness of your brushing is gonna make a difference to how deep your greens are if you're making a green. Same with any colour really, but particularly on this occasion. So if I just lift that off and see, yeah, see now that is a completely different green to the green that I put down first, and I really like that. So then we're going in with this final lot of green. Now this is going to be again another completely different green. I'm going back in with the same two colours. I'm going to use my Surf's Up and my Juicy Pineapple, but I'm just going to go a little bit lighter if I can. So spread this around so that I've got a really pale yellow on there, okay? And then I want a really pale covering of the blue on the top. So I'm going to go in with my Bijou brush on this occasion because it's a softer brush, and I don't want a lot of blue in here, okay? So I am going really quite gently with that Bijou brush over that aperture. And again, this is going to give me a different green, she said, hopefully, to the green that I got before. Not as different as the one I'd already done yesterday, but it's fine. It's different enough. It's just about sort of experimenting and seeing what colours you end up with. So if you wanted to go back and add a little bit more yellow, in fact, let's do it just to see if it makes a difference. If I go back over this with a yellow again and just see if it just brings it back a little bit. It might add too much yellow and make it completely different, but it's only a piece of card at the end of the day. It's not going to make any difference. That's okay, I like that. But when I show you the ones that I've already done, like the two samples that I've already done, you'll see what I mean when I say that I can make 3 different shades of green. Alright, so now I'm going to go in and put the veins in, and I am going to use the Woodland Moss on this one. Because this green is really quite a dark green, I want to be able to, I think I've moved my card, I want to be able to, let me put that back, bear with, I'd only got a small piece of card to hand, so I must have caught it when I took that last stencil out. But the beauty of the peg system is that you can put it back in exactly the right place without any bother at all. That's perfect. Right, so now I am going to go in with my stencil brushes because this green is a darkish green, but because the first green I did was quite dark, I need this to be extra dark, if you're with me. So the veins actually show up on that dark green. And then as I'm going along, I will take more ink off the brush so that the green becomes lighter for the lighter greens that I've added. So you'll still get veins, but they won't be as obvious because you don't want them as dark on the lighter leaves as you do on the darker ones. And if we lift it off, we can always pull it back and go over it again if we decide that they're not quite obvious enough, but I think they'll be absolutely fine. Yeah, I like that. That looks fab. These stencils have so much detail on them, it's unbelievable. I just think they are stunning. Now I'm going with purple, and I'm using the fabulous Spiced Plum on this occasion. And I'm going to use my bijou brush because I want a really light covering on this first stencil. So again, I've gone into my ink pad and I'm taking a lot of that ink off there before I add it down onto my stencil. Okay, and I am going to be using the pigment inks on this one. Now I know they're not blending inks, they're not designed to be blending inks, but they will blend. You just have to be careful that you don't go over the top. Okay, so I'll put my base down first, and you can see how beautifully these bijou brushes spread this ink around and give you a really lovely soft coverage. I think they're fabulous brushes. In fact, I've just ordered 2 more. Okay, so that's the first layer. Now before I take that off, I am going to go in with, what did I use? Yeah, my pigment ink, and I'm going to use the Sugar Candy. So we're coming in here at the bottom of this bud, because obviously there's going to be some shadow where that bud casing sort of sits in front of the main bud. All right, and then all the way around here, I'll just make sure you can still see, I'm just going all the way around, and I'm just coming in ever so slightly off the stencil into that flower. Now I've said, you know, they're not blending inks, they're pigment inks, but look how beautifully they are blending. I think they're amazing. I'm just going to go around the edges just with this pigment, just to add a little bit of detail around the edge. I'm taking most of my ink off the stencil rather than re-inking. Now I've gone heavier down the bottom because obviously as you're looking down at a flower, your shading is going to be darker at the bottom than it is at the top. So, you know, just bear that in mind when you're adding your shading. Think where your light's going to hit your flower. Okay, so we'll leave it for that. Leave it at that for now and take that layer off. And then we're going in with the detail with number 6. Okay, now again I'm going in with purple because I love this purple, it's amazing. And I'm going to go quite deep with this, so I might actually lose quite a bit of this, but don't worry about that because it's going to give you a base and you're just going to add to it. When you've added the ink on this piece here, you're just going to add to that shading in a second. So just go in with your bijou brush. You can use a wonder brush if you want, or you can use a stencil brush. It's entirely up to you. Depends what look you want. But I just love these because they give me a really lovely soft coverage. And I want this to be quite deep, so that's why I've gone quite heavy. Alright, now before I take that off, I'll just pop that down there. I'm going to go back in with that pigment. I might actually go over it again with a bit more purple. I'll see in a second. So I'm going back in with my pigment ink, and I'm adding a little bit of ink onto the centre of the flowers. And I'm going quite heavy because obviously it's a bright colour onto a dark colour. Alright, so you're going to lose some of that sort of pink on that purple. But I am going to go back in a second with my purple. Dogs have obviously seen a flower or a leaf blow past. Not kidding, they're a pain in the neck. Okay, I'll just go back in there as well. I think that'll do. Now you can see that the pink is sort of sitting quite proud there. It's sort of a little bit in your face. So what I would say is just bring it back a little bit with your purple, and I'm using my Wonder Brush this time because it will give me, I can go a little bit heavier with this because it's domed and it's going to sort of go over the top of those lines. It's going to give me a little bit more colour, but I'm not losing all of the pink. The pink is still there. I just think it just gives you a completely different look. Okay, now then, the centres on these, on the picture, on the actual packaging, are white, but I've done mine yellow. Okay, and I went in with yellow to start with, and I went with the pigment ink, but I found, and you'll see what I mean in a second, that the yellow doesn't really stand out very well on a dark colour. Okay, and if I show you what I mean, it's there but you can hardly see it. So what I thought, well, how can I make it stand out a little bit better than that? So I thought what I would use is one of Lisa's Sprinkler Twinkle pens in yellow. Very unsung hero in your craft stash in my mind. I don't use these nearly half as much as I should. They are a fabulous, fabulous pen. There's plenty left in stock. They're £24.99 for 6 and they are brilliant. Right, so I'm going in here with my yellow sparkle pen. Alright, now there is yellow coming off here, but you can't really see it because of the yellow ink on here. Okay, that's better. Now you can see now that that yellow really stands out because I've used the sparkle pen, and the sparkle pen will actually sit on the top of that colour. Okay, and if you look, you can still see the pink on the bud here, and you can still see some of the pink in here as well. Okay, and I'm really pleased with that. I think that's, I love the fact that you can get so many different greens. Right, so we've done all our stenciling. Now I'm going to die cut it, and remember that you'll have a little offset on this die so that you don't lose any of that beautiful colouring you just spent time doing. Alright, and I would tape it down, because the last thing you want when you've spent 20 minutes stenciling all that beautiful colour is for your die to move on the card. Alright, so I'm just going to pop this through my machine. Bear with me, because I'm not lifting the machine up onto my desk. Okay, and then I'm just going to pop this out here like so. Now that looks beautiful on its own, I think, without embossing it. You don't have to emboss it if you don't want to. You could actually stencil it directly onto your card blank if you want to. Nobody says you've got to use the embossing folder, but I shall because I love it. So I'm popping this in here, and I line mine up in the deboss side, and that's really because it just sort of seats itself into that folder. Okay, so it's found its own sort of, its own place, she said, having moved it as she took her hand away. Start again, Dawn. I haven't really watched any of your comments today, I'm sorry. Okay, let's have another go. It's worth taking a little bit of time and lining it up as best you can so that you don't get your embossing in the wrong place. That's better. Right, change my sandwich, put my folder on my machine and run it back through. Okay, and there's my embossed flower. I love this. I think it's such a beautiful set. I think it's just divine. Okay, so now I'm going to put my card together. Now the card that I'm doing today is a 7x7, just for Sue, And then I've used the scalloped and plain nested circles. I've used the largest one and the next one in. And then I used the little freebie stencil set that you got if you did an order on the last show. And it's a fabulous little set. It's 2 stencils and it's just genius. I've only used this stencil just to put a little bit of interest in the background here. Okay. Now I've already added my 3D pads, because I always think it's nice to raise stuff up on your card, because it just, I don't know, it just lifts the card in my mind. Yes, you can do it all on one level if you want to, but I just like the effect of having it a little bit raised. I just make sure I've got my card the right way around, because I've done that before. Okay, I'll just put that down first. No problem, Linda. You can always catch up. It'll always be in the group, and then it'll go onto YouTube later on as well, so no worries. Okay, so now I'm going to add my flower, and my flower is going to sit here just to the left hand side, because my sentiment, which has come from the Bold Phrases set, which I think you'll find is on TV this week as well, and then I've 3D'd this so that the sentiment just sits up a little bit. When I add my flower, I'm going to use 3D glue gel, okay, because that will give me a little bit more manoeuvrability, and I haven't got to worry where I'm putting my pads, because my glue gel will squash down and give me a level. All right, so I'm just going to put my sentiment down first, and that way I know where to put my flower. All right, so my sentiment is going in the middle there, and you'll see I've cut it in exactly the same colours as I've cut my background. All right, and then I've done 2 other cards, which I will show you in a second. One is pinks and the other one is purples, just to show you a little bit different, really. 2 different shades. Pinks and purples are my go-to, so no great surprise that I've used pinks and purples. It is a beautiful stencil set, I have to be honest. This one and the Sweat Pea are awesome. My 2 favourites, I think. I really need to order a Sweat Pea because I want the limited edition one. Sorry, Lisa. Okay, just a little bit of glue gel there, and a little bit at the bottom down there. Okay, that should do. Don't want to go overboard, but I don't want it to fall off. I don't want it to fall off either. So flip that over and place that down just so. And it is as simple as that. Okay, and that is the card complete. It doesn't need anything else. I don't want anything to detract from this. It's simple enough to draw the eye into the flower, and I think that's, for me, that's what you've spent the time doing. So if I just quickly show you the other 2 that I did. This one was done on the same sort of basis, so I've used the same sort of colours, but you can see I've gone a lot darker on this one, and I didn't do any stenciling on the background on this one. But if you look here, you can see that there are definitely 3 different shades of green. Okay, obviously I had a lot more time yesterday to spend with my blending, so you know I could sort of mess around a little bit more. But there are 3 definite different shades of green there, and I think that just adds to that set personally, rather than doing it all in the same green. That is also a 7x7 card, and then this one is an 8x8, and all I've done with this is I've just used the twisted cubes in the background, and I've stenciled 3 different colours in there. Believe it or not, that was supposed to be purple. I must have had some ink on my brush from a previous a previous session and it didn't turn out purple at all, but I don't mind. I don't think it looks wrong, and there's only me that knows it's the wrong colour. Well, you all know now because I've just told you, but what I'm trying to say is, if you make a mistake, there's only you know you've made the mistake. The people you're going to give the card to won't know you've made a mistake, will they? So don't worry about it. I've used the background because I didn't want to waste the card, and all I've done is literally added this with some 3D glue gel and just cut out the sentiment. And I added ink to the card, and I used the same ink that I used on the flower, so that I knew that the shading would be the same colour. Okay, so I haven't used a pink card is what I'm trying to say. I've used white card and I've inked it. Alright, but I think you'll agree that there are 3 cards there that look the same but different, but just stenciling and die cutting, and you've made 3 cards that anybody would be pleased to receive, I feel. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. So have a fabulous week, everybody. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye now.